Assalamu alaikum friends, welcome back to the channel, always with Younes Charfaoui. In this video, we are going to see how you can do some migrations in the Room database. Let's get started. So here in the application, we do have this Word database, right? So we can start inserting something like that. We can go to the app inspection. We see that everything is working fine. Let's see the database. Exactly, we have this Word DB in which we have our word. If we try to add another word, another word, please hello, and do the insert, we will see another word. Hopefully it is working fine. Now we are going to use this example to demonstrate the concept of migrations and in Room specifically. So what is migrations? Let's take an example here. So here in the entity in the table, let's pretend we do some modification. So what we want to do, like any kind of modification, you can rename a column, for example, you can add a new column, you can, I don't know, remove table, for example, or remove table, or just update the name of the table. Let's do both. So if I change that created to created date, something like that, and I run the application again, the app will crash. It's a legal state exception or something like that. The app will crash exactly. If you do go to lockat here, let me just change that to compact view. And here we go, it's an illegal state exception. Room cannot verify the integrity of data. So what we did, we changed the schema, exactly, we changed something about the schema, but forgot to update the version number. What is that version number? You can go to the database, okay, it is Words database. So here in that database, as you can see, you are doing version 1. So whenever you update the schema, you have to update the version 2. But when you do that, if you run the application again, you will encounter an error because you didn't tell Room how to go from the version 1 to version 2. And this is what we mean by migrations. So we will create migrations specifically to do only that. So as you can see here, a migration from 1 to 2 was required. Now there is 2 workarounds here. If you are currently building the application and there is no users right now for the application, so you can easily update the schema while you are developing, that's perfectly fine. But the migration play the crucial role when the application is in production and you have many users. So when you are in development, simply put one here and just uninstall the app and install it again, and that would work fine. Simply uninstall it using adb uninstall app like that, and come on, yeah, exactly. If I run it again, it won't happen, but it will reflect the new created data if I change anything. That's one workaround for this thing. If I can insert things in here, you will see them right away. Now there is another way to do that, which is to tell the Room that when you don't find migrations, just go to destructive mode. So you can do that when you create the database in here. So here I'm creating the database. You can do an option here called fall to destructive migrations. So when you don't have migrations, Room will completely destruct the database and recreate it again. That would work fine. And there is other variations for that. You can go to destructive migrations starting from a specific version. That would work fine also. And also on downgrade. So when you want to downgrade the versions, you can do that also. All right, that would work. That's also an option, but we are not going to use that. We are going to create some migrations. Now for Room, there is 2 types of migrations. There is normal migration, like manual migration you want to do with normal SQL queries or SQL queries. And there is some automatic migrations we will see. Before that, we have to allow something. We have to allow to export the schema. Why this is important? Like, it's not important for the sake of migrations themselves, but for us to compare the versions and allow us to create versions of these databases at different version time. Like I'm talking about this version. So whenever you update the version, Room will export a schema. We put that true. And that way you can store those schemas. They are plain JSON files. You can use them to recreate database. So we can use it in order to test the migration. We do test migration in the next video. So we need to export the schema, but we need to tell Gradle little things. So here I will just copy and paste some of the things. So here we need to tell Room about that. So I think it is the following. So here we need to put that. It is just some compile options, some annotation processor options. So here we will tell him like the schema location will be in our directory here under schema. And this incremental stuff, these are some arguments to use at compile time to generate the stuff in here. That's it. We need just to sync. And now let me just fall back. I need here this thing, and I need to uninstall the app. And for that, Yeah, we didn't do anything here. Awesome. And export schema true. Yeah, exactly. So if I run the app right now, this will be version 1, right? So here we will see, like, you have to do that. You have to go to the package in here, and here you see schema, as you can see. And if I just like insert things in here, I must see reload from disk. Yeah, exactly. I must see JSON 1. Okay, it's 1. As you can see, a lot of stuff in going in. This is description of the database at version 1. And when you go to version 2 and 3 and 4, you will see also a lot of JSON files. We are going to use those JSON files in order to create a database in the test at specific versions and see how we can apply migrations to see if the migrations are working fine or not. So here we are relying on unit tests. Yeah, this is just a description of how to create the table, how to create the index, how to insert things into the database and so on. So you don't have to put attention to understand this, but it will come in handy when you compare versions. So the database is working fine. And now let's do a migration. Here we have two types of migrations, manual migration and automatic migrations. Okay, so automatic migrations we have for 4 things. I think renaming a column and deleting a column, and also removing a table and renaming a table. So the migrations need to live somewhere, right? So let's start in here. Let's start in the database. We can create the migration. Here you need to create a class, okay, that will extend from auto migration spec. We need to name it whatever name you want. Let's call it migration 122. Now here you need to annotate it with the thing you change. So for me, what I change is that I change the column from created to created date. Now what I can do here is that I can use the following. I can use rename column, and here I need to specify certain things. The table name, which is words table, and from the column and to column. Okay, let me put that in here. Let me put created to created date. Okay. So this is how you can define migration. But now you need to tell room, like you should be consistent in that, like you know what you are doing. So if there is some typo, it will be a problem. And now, well, you can define, let's say in one migration you deleted 2 column. You can or rename 2 column. You can just annotate it with more of this, right? So even you can do, like, for example, rename a table at the same time when doing this. That would work perfectly fine. Now, what we need to do is to tell room to use this migration as part of the auto migration step. So here, what you need to do simply is that we need to do auto migrations. That will be, let me do that. For the auto migrations, that will be an array. I can create an object of auto migration, something like that, part of annotation or something. I tell it from and the to, right, and the spec. Let me do that. The spec will be ours here, so we can do the following. Okay, just import it, and it will need to be a class, and here we need to define spec, something like that. So I want it from 1 to 2 to apply this migration. That would work fine, and here we need to update this to 2. So if we run this, we should expect it to work fine, and we should see a generated thing. Exactly. So let's start with the errors. So auto migration, failure in migration 1 to 2 created this thing. Rename, delete. Auto migration file migration 1 to 2 created in table word. Okay, I think I made an error. It's word table, not words table. Okay, that's fine. You can run it again. That's the beauty of compile time error checking. Now, if we run it, it should work fine. And we can insert things into the database easily. Insert it. We can check if it is working fine. And also of the previous, yeah, exactly, we inserted one thing, and as you can see, it's the created date. And what we need to see is that there is 2 in here. Now, if you can compare this to, and like I can do this, split and right, what you can do here, you can compare that the created and created date. That's fine, that's awesome. Now you can do another type of migration called manual migration. That involves, for example, adding completely a new column or altering a type of a column, like it can be as complex as you want because you have the power of using SQL queries. So before that, let me clean a little bit here. I don't like my migrations to be part of the database, so I usually move them into another class. So let's create here something called migrations. Yeah, exactly. I have a folder called migrations, and I move this migration to an object. Like for automatic migration, I use like object class called automatic migrations. and I move this, yeah, for the data to migrations to, I think, automatic migrations. Yeah, let me just move it. Oh, okay, it doesn't have to be automatic refactoring. I can put it here, okay? And that would work perfectly fine for me, okay? Or you can basically just delete that and use it as part of a file called automigration. So you can do also that, and that would work fine because it's a top level class. Okay, that would work fine, but let's you group them into some space. Okay, that's for the automatic migrations. There is an error. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so after cleaning, let's start with the migration, the other migration. What we want to do is simply, we want to add another column. Let's create another column. Let's call it year, for example. It will be an int, and by default, it will be 0. But in order to communicate the default value, we need also, like starting from version of new room, you can use the column info here in order to set the default value, and it will be by default 0. This will be a migration, right? So we need to do something about it. If you run the application now, it will crash, obviously. So we need to tell room how to migrate. This is not an automatic migration. So what we need to do, of course, we need to create a migration. But this time, it will be a different kind of migration. So let's also create a part of here called manual migrations. And here we need to define the migration. So simply you'll start like the following. Let's call it migration, this will be migration 223, for example. And this will be the following. It will be an object implementation of what? Of migration abstract class, like the following. And here you will tell it from version 2 to version 3, right? You need to implement the following. Guess what you will need to implement? You need to implement the migrate option, in which you get access to the database, in which you can execute SQL, you can query stuff. So as much complexity you want, you can do with SQL queries. So what we want to do here is simply want to execute a query. It will be simply, we are going to alter table called word table. And what we want to do is simply, we want to add a column named year of type integer, yeah, integer, something like that. It won't be none, and of default value of 0. We need to do all of that. Now, in order to tell room to use this migration, we don't use it here, but we use it when we create it. So it will be here. We can move this into like a static constant thing into the database, so we don't have to move between modules and everything. But here, what you need to do, simply, you need to do the following: add migration. Come on, add migrations. Here it will be a var arg of migration. So simply you can do migration 2 to 3. Okay, that's it on how to migrate from 2 to 3 using this thing. As I said, with this migration, with this, like you have the option to do all of the SQL you want. If you want to create, for example, a column from a column, for example, you can use the date in order to generate the year. You can use it. You can query all the years you have and then insert them under some point. You can do that. You can create tables. You can do whatever you want. I will show you some complexity from the documentation. Now, with this in mind, I think it will run perfectly. Let me check if we didn't do anything stupid. Yeah, everything is working fine. Yeah, exactly. We need this one. We need 3 here. Okay, we need 3. If you don't do it, it will crash. Okay, so let me just run it again. The application is working fine. Let's do 5C5 here, insert it, check it into the database. We must see a column called year. Exactly, default value is 0, and here is it. So our migration is working fine. Keep in mind that we are manually testing our migrations, like by looking into errors and inserting things, and that will be a problem. In the next video, we are going to see how you can unit test this thing to create migrations from one part to another part using this JSON file. As you can see, we have another version here called 3 in which we can use. So keep in mind that this is important in order to do the unit test. And also important, like you can push this into your version control system so you can check at any point how the schema was. So basically you can test it and debug some errors if possible. So here in the documentation, you can check many things. So this is the awesome documentation. Android documentation is the best documentation ever. So here you can see that you can use automatic migration with the following stuff. You can delete or rename tables. Same thing for the columns. There is one thing I forget to mention. Yeah, this is test. We'll see the test in the next video. I wanted to show you some complexity behind migrations. As you can see, this is complete complex migration. Simply, we are creating a new table, like this is temporary table. We are inserting things based on the selection from the previous table. Then we are removing that table and we are renaming that temporary table to another table. This is problem. I think there was some problem in order to do that, and they mitigated using this kind of approach. That's perfectly fine. There is another thing I think I didn't mention. Here, I think, where is the automatic migration? Here. You can do something called on-post migration. You can implement something called on-post migration. When you do that, after the migration, you can get access to the database, so you can do whatever you want with it. You can insert things after doing that. You can update whatever you want. It's SQL. Okay, I'm not going to dive into SQL here. So that's it. I forgot to mention it. And in the next video, inshallah, we are going to see how you can test this migration. We are going to do simple 2 tests for the migrations we did. This is it for this video. Thanks a lot for watching this video to the end. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and see you in the next videos. Assalamu alaikum.